So, like the title says, we're going to be working on a double exposure look. Now, you can kind of use any footage for this, but in this case, I'm just going to be using a landscape and a person. You could use a dog, you can use whatever you want, but there are a couple of steps that we will want to take before we actually get into Fusion. But overall, it's not super difficult, and I think it really gives a cool, unique, creative look to any project in which you're working on. So without further ado, let's get started. Explore a wide selection of pre-made creative tools for DaVinci Resolve, like titles, transitions, slideshows and infographics, like bar charts and callouts, and much, much more. Link in the description for more information. Okay, so to start with this project, I needed to get some stuff. Now, it really would depend on what you're shooting here, you know, an image of a person, a dog, a car, whatever, and then the other element that will be in the background. And in this case, I'm using just a static picture for the outline, and then the background is actually a video. So where did I go to get these? So first I went over here and I just kind of like looked through their whole library. There'll be a link to this whole website. The cool thing with this is different photographers get to put their images on here, and it's kind of a way for them to get their pictures out there and actually be seen. But one of the cool things is if you look at the info here, and each picture is a little bit different, but licensing, it's free to use and you don't have to actually state who the creator was. So yeah, so this is the image that we're going to be using, and then for a video, I have an account over at Storyblocks. Now this is a paid service, but you could really just use any video that you have. And I just kind of went through here to find a shot that was kind of like a landscape that wasn't moving really fast. So like stuff like this is moving just a little too fast, and subtle stuff like this would probably be good. So I just wanted something that was kind of like snowy mountains. So that's what we started with. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to go into a image editor. Doesn't matter which one you use, they all pretty much have this functionality that we're going to do. We're going to be masking her out of this picture. So I decided that I want obviously her hair, her jacket, her hand, and I'm just going to cut out the rest of this background. It's pretty simple. Each tool is a little bit different. If you don't have a program like this, Infinity Photo is a paid program, or a Photoshop, but you want a program that you can edit images in, you could get a program called GIMP. It's actually free. And all of the stuff that we're going to be doing today, you can do for free. You can mask in DaVinci Resolve, well, in Fusion, but you got to use the right tool for what you're actually doing. And you can do it, but the tools that are in a photo editor just make things a little bit easier, because you can simply just grab the paintbrush and then we can start to go around and get all of her and her jacket just like this, and it'll easily just mask everything instead of having to go around and masking it other ways. If we were to use like the color page, we could obviously pull different colors and shades and stuff like that, but this really just makes things a lot easier, and I could have just used like a bigger brush. You do this, and then once you get it looking a little bit better than this, I don't want to take too long, you come over to refine, and then you can obviously, there's, you know, this little area here, we can fix that, we can hit cancel, and we can grab that area, grab these areas to make it look great, go back over into refine, then we can look at it. We could probably cut out this little bit here, maybe get a little closer to the hand, in here we could cut all that out. Once you have that, then you can mask it, and then here's my masked picture. Then all we want to do from here is, now we have an alpha background, right? So it's an invisible, there's no colors there, it just has an alpha value. And what we'll want to do here is we want to take this with its alpha. So one of the things that you're going to want to do, so if I go to export, JPEG doesn't have an alpha, but if we go over to PNG, we can export that alpha with it. So that's what we're going to want to do. So we export that. Once we have that exported and we have our video, we can now come over into DaVinci Resolve. You can come over to the edit page and, you know, right click. Well, pick your frame rate that you want. Once you do that, then you're going to go right click, new Fusion comp, and depending on, you know, how long you want this title sequence or whatever type of sequence it's going to be. You can set the duration, obviously the frame rate, it's going to match the timeline. Hit create, it'll be right over here. We can then drag it into our timeline. I'm just going to leave this one here for reference if we ever need to go back. Shouldn't have to, but once we have it here, we can go over into Fusion. Once we go into Fusion, if you have a bunch of things on your timeline and you're not sure what you're in, you can always click on clips, and then right here it'll say which clips. Now if you have a whole timeline full of stuff, you know, this will be full, but I only have 2 Fusion comms here, so it's just the 1 Fusion comm. And we know that we're in it because if I zoom in here, we have a media out. So we need to connect everything. The final node will be this media out because it'll process everything in Fusion, and then when it goes to a media out, that's what will put it back on the timeline. All right, so now we need to go in and we need to grab our content that we have, that we brought into our project. So this is going to be, if I drag it up, we can see what we're looking at here. This one is obviously our background. If we take a look at this, we have the girl. One thing that you'll notice here, if I click off of here, is the resolutions here. We can see that we just kind of kept the default resolution of the image and we didn't change it. So this one is going to be significantly bigger than the background. So if I view them right now, we can see like the one is obviously way too big. So we're going to, let's just remove just this merge, and we're going to first work with this background. So if you drag and release, you can see up here the different elements that we're working in. We're going to keep this background, but because we're only going to be using her, we want to be able to move the background around. So one of the easiest ways to do this is we're just going to click here and drag, and that's going to bring down a background node. And if we take our shot that we have of the mountains here, and we're just going to drop it on, we can see it's pretty much the same thing. But how a merge works is it's going to take the background image, which is just as black, and it's going to put the other image on top. So we can see here, if we look at these connectors, that this one is a foreground, so that's going to be in front, and then this one is going to be the background. If they're connected the wrong way, you can just click on here and then hold down Control and hit T, and it flips them. You can always just break the connections and then reconnect them up to fit your needs. But now if we look at it, now we can see the one image on the other one. Now you might be saying, why would you want that? And the reason why we want that is because we'll be able to come into this merge and we can move these mountains around, because we're only going to have the mountains displayed where she is. So we might want to use a different portion of the mountains. So we're going to want to keep that separate. And next we have her. Now she's a bit bigger, and we want to be able to change her size and stuff. So what we can do is we can grab in a transform node, which is this guy right here. We'll bring it in and we can connect this up. And now we can take all of this and we can connect this up. So now if we take a look at it, we can see that she's much bigger. If we come into this transform, now you might be saying, why don't we just change it on the merge? It's because we need her to be as a separate element, and we'll kind of see as we go into this. So it's kind of like I'm informing you a couple of steps ahead so we don't have the issue later on. But in this transform, we can now shrink her down a little bit, and we can kind of put her wherever we want in this frame. If we make her a little bit bigger, we want her to be over here. Now, one of the problems is we have her there, but we also have that background there. So how would we cut the background only to be where she is? Well, what we can do here is we can take now this transform and we can come into this merge. The only thing left is a mask. We can mask it. Now we don't see it. But if we view just this merge, I'm just going to go to 2 views. We drag this up here. We can see that now we have just the mountains, right? So now we have to take her and modify her in some way so that we can see more than just her actual full image here. So we could come into this merge here and we could come over to blend and we could start to reduce this, and now we're starting to get that effect. One thing you can see is our background here is black. So an easy thing that I'm just going to do for here is come into our background and we're just going to move this alpha down. And now we're kind of getting somewhere. We can see that we can still see her a little bit and we can see those mountains. And the cool thing is because this merge is separate, the only thing that that merge is affecting is the placement of this, the mountains. What we can do is we can click on this merge, and now we can move where the mountains are inside of her. Now we can take this a step further, because right now, if we move this, it's kind of like in or out, and we kind of cut the top there. So we kind of want to be cautious of that. But maybe we want this to be a little bit further down. So one of the cool things that we can do is, because now we masked, there's a lot of masking going on here, but we masked this background, right, into just her shape. But here, what we can do is we can mask her image inside of this whole side, right? So where she's actually visible. So just to make this easier, we're just going to go full here. And next, what we can do is we can grab another merge, or excuse me, geez. We can grab another mask, and we'll connect this in. And now on this mask, we come over into the merge here. We can click invert so we can actually see what we're doing here. And now we can come in. Let's zoom out a little bit. Just holding control and mouse wheeling out is we can kind of mask the top of her. And now if we want to, we can flip that and we can see, like, okay, she's there, but we can come in and blend this now. Let's zoom in just a little bit. So now we're getting her and down below. So now we can play around with this and kind of get like how much of her face we want. And then we can play around with these and kind of get, so like here you can see we're kind of getting some of those mountains here back and forth. So we can change this, like, blend, the amount that it's blending here. So we're kind of getting some of her jacket, maybe up just a little bit, something like this. Getting some of her. Here we get a little bit of a mountain, so maybe the blur is just a little too much. We can bring her in a little bit more. Something like that. You can kind of play around with this until you get something that you actually like. I think I want to move this mountain just a little bit. Because right here, if we look throughout this shot, we have shadow and then we have light. So we can kind of play around with this. All right. So now that we have that, we kind of have that whole look going there, right? But now let's add in another background. And we're going to put this on top of this background. So we're just going to go this way. And we'll view this quick. And we can come in and let's change up this color a little bit. Now you might be saying, okay, that looks drastic. There's a couple of things here that I don't like. One, this edge here is too sharp. So what we can do is we can add in a blur just on the mask, not on her image, because we still want her like all of her hair and all that to be sharp. Because if we just went right out of here and got a blur, we're going to be blurring the whole image, right? So if we blur this, it's going to be blurring the whole image. We don't really want that. We just want to be blurring the mask. So what we would do, I'm just going to click here, and we're going to hold down Shift, hit Spacebar, and that brings up our tool here. If you know what the name of a tool is, you can search it here, and we hit Enter. Now we have it here. We can go into the blur and then into our merge here. So this is just, we're just affecting the mask now. So if we look at her, she's going to stay sharp, but all of this is going to be softer, right? So maybe like 1.2, something like that. So now it's not so harsh. I think that looks good. So we're pretty much getting there now, and this is starting to look a lot better. Now, this is where we would want to add in more texture to really get this to like connect with that background and to connect with the text that we add and stuff on there. I have a pack on my website. It's Light Leaks. You can get Light Leaks anywhere, but this is one of the ones that I'm using from my pack. So I'm just going to add this in here, and we're going to lay this on top of everything. So if we take a look at this, it's obviously really harsh. But what we're going to do is we're going to switch this to screen. now we're getting a nice texture being added on top of everything. So now that purple is adding on top of here, it's adding to her. If you ever wanted to, you could come in before this and you could add something in here like the color corrector, and you could go in and change the color of all of that to something else that would fit, you know, your project a little bit more. I kind of like how it is, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Some other texture that we could throw in here is we could come in and do film, I think it is. Film damage. Yep, right there it is. Add film damage in. We go right into that, and there we go. We got some film damage, and that is a bit strong. I would probably back off some stuff. Like the... Oh, hold on. I'd probably back off the vignette a little bit, and then just maybe overall this whole thing a little bit. And there's tons of different settings in here for like different dirt. You could add in like more dirt, but where it's at, it's kind of fine. And as you play it, then you can start to see like everything a little bit more. So now we got all sorts of colors changing a little bit. If you were to add text onto the end of this, which I don't really like, but I just want to show you. So the text plus node, we add that on here, and then let's say we get, let's view it, we bring it on, and let's grab a color from her jacket. Okay, that doesn't work, that doesn't look good. Maybe something in here. Something like that. Let's get a better font. So if we had this on the end here, it's okay, but it's not going to be affected by all of the texture that we added onto everything. So what I would actually end up doing is taking all of this and moving it after our texture elements there. So I would just go into here and then over to there. So now as we would go through here, let's just look at this here. Now all of this is now going to be affected by, as you can see, like right there, all of the text is going to be affected by all of the texture that we added in there. So here we start to get some good stuff going here. Now there's a ton of stuff that you can do at this point. You can add in animation. So if we wanted to, we could come into here. So at this point we have nothing that we've added. It's just adding in text, but we can move her. This is where breaking everything up into separate elements. Now we can take her and we can move her without affecting the shot underneath or her or the mask or anything. But now we can kind of move her. So maybe start her there, come to the end, come over, and maybe we go 1.2 on the size, and that might not be good, but 1. So if we come over to here, that might work. Actually, let's pull them back just a little bit and maybe come over to here, bring it over. So she's just kind of like growing. And with all of that other stuff being added on there, we start to get a really cool looking look. Now, you could add even more texture to like maybe this background element. Get something on there. You could add on, you know, even more to it. Instead of it just being static, you could have something going on back there. But I at least just wanted to show you what is going on here. I just wanted to show you how to kind of connect all of this stuff up to get a pretty good looking shot. Let me let this cache out quick. Before we can do that, we need to take this media out and go from the damage, the film damage, into the media out. Now we come over here, and now we see all of it here. So I'm just going to let the render cache cache this quick, and we'll just take a look and see what we think of it. All right, full screen. So there we go. Now I think like the overall time of this, I think the blur, now that I'm looking at it full screen, the blur might be a little bit much. I might want to pull that back just a little bit. She looks good. All of that looks good. I think she just moves just a little too quick. So, easy enough. Great thing about Fusion, well, DaVinci Resolve with Fusion, is we can just go in and switch it up. And we don't have to worry about very much. So we'll just go 1, 1, and let's just bring this over just a little bit. So maybe like to there. And if you ever wanted to add easing into here, come into our spline. Let's close this, and we'll just go just select it. So here are the 2 moves that I have. The one is the center. It ends up going into a modifier. The center goes into a modifier. But long story short, you can just come into here, and here are our keyframes. We can grab them, and we can hit F for flatten, hit T, and then we can start to worry about like easing if we want to do any of that. Or you could just grab one of the handles and kind of move it to kind of work for your project. So there we go. And as easy as that, you come right back over here. You can let this cache. So when this is caching, this is actually creating a file. While when you're on the Fusion page and you have a cache there, there's a couple of different caches over there, but by default, everything's going to cache into memory. And if your system doesn't have the recommended amount of memory, things can kind of go slow, and you could be caching, and then parts of your cache that you've already cached start to disappear because it only has so much memory. So Blackmagic Designs recommends having a minimum of 32 gigs. I know for a lot of people that isn't really reasonable. So if you come over to the edit page and let this cache, this is actually caching and creating a file, and then you're just playing that file instead of having the RAM cache. Well, they call it memory cache, but now we can look at this full screen, and I think that looks a bit better. And now that I notice it, it's kind of cool that like in her hair and all, you can see it a little bit there as well. One thing too that I might want to think about doing is this. For me, I think it's a little too strong. So I would go in, maybe adjust that a little bit, pull that back just a little bit. I feel like it's too strong here. And I would probably add in some type of animation for like the text and stuff like that. But outside of that, it's just minor tweaks to kind of fit what you like. So I would just pull that back just a bit so it's not so strong there. You still get the effect, but it's just not so powerful. But yeah, then in the text, maybe add in a modifier in there to get the text to animate a little bit. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. You might even want to add on to here. I think we have like film grain. There's actually a couple of them. So if I think this is a part of the studio version. If you don't have the studio version, instead of using that, I think you have the ability to use TV. And TV also on one of these has its own green, I believe. What is that? Yeah, so we turn the bar strength down. Bar size is 0. Oh, wait. 0. There we go. Scan line sound. There we go. Now we have green. So this is obviously the strength of that. I think that looks really good. Maybe a little bit less. But that kind of thing really pulls that all together. So now if I take a look at that with a little bit of green, let it cache quick, take one last look at it, and that's kind of going to be it for this. Okay, there we are. So we take a look at that. I think that looks pretty good. The only thing I just realized is none of this green is moving. So we come back over into Fusion, go into TV, and I believe this random, yeah, that gets it to move. So just come to the beginning, keyframe it, come to the other end. There we go. Jeez. Okay, there we go. So now if we take a look at this, there we go. Now we got the little bit of noise going there. So that's pretty much it. That's how you do a double exposure within DaVinci Resolve and using Fusion to power a lot of this. We also had to use Affinity Photo. You could use any of the other editing, image editing tools to do something like this, but curious what you guys think about this. Do you guys do this? Do you like this? I think it'd be a perfect way to promote different products. But yeah, let me know in the comments. If you guys have questions with DaVinci Resolve projects that you're working on, I do have a private Facebook group for you to join. There is a link in the description to that. Outside of that, that's kind of all I got for you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That being said, my name's Jaron. Thanks for watching.